Good afternoon, Ori and the Blind Forest speedrunning fans. We're back after a little bit of a break since our first match of the morning. That was a really cool run between Jella24 and Icex123. We got some great commentary from JHobz and Sonic Screwdriver on that one. For this next one coming up, you've got myself, the Roos is Loose. I've commentated a pretty good number of these matches. You might recognize me. And then I'll be joined with Grimelios, another extremely talented commentator. How are you doing today,
Yo,
Grim?
I am good. I'm good. Bit chilly, but otherwise I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm down here in Texas. We definitely do not have that problem here. All right, so Grim, why don't you tell us a little bit about this match we're about to watch here?
Sure. So the race we have coming up is between JHobz296 and Snoopy, who goes by either Snoop or SnoopyMKWii. Hobbs has done some races already. He's also commentated a bunch. He's very prevalent in the speedrunning scene. He has a whole list of games he's run. Little waste of time to go through all of them. But he's very experienced as a speedrunner. He's also been running Ori since like late 2016. Is when he really got into it. So he's improved his times massively since then. I know he's been practicing it a lot. And then on the other side, we have Snoopy, who's sort of been around Ori for a long time, and he ran the original, but he hasn't really run DE until more recently. Most of his speedrunning experience has actually come from tassing Mario Kart, which is why his name is SnoopyMKWii. So it'll be an interesting matchup between these two. Do you have any sort of initial thoughts about the race as we sort of prepare to get started?
Yeah, I think it's really cool that both of these racers are people that we have in the Ori community now. Snoopy, like you said, comes from sort of more of a task background, so I'll be interested to see if maybe that sort of mathematical perfectionist approach that taskers take will affect his gameplay here. And looks like we are getting the race started here. They'll have the timer synced up momentarily, and these racers will be off. Whoop, hold up, hold up.
Yeah, I think we're just
I think we're just syncing. Never mind.
we're just testing it. I think we sort of had a last minute change of restreamer, so we're trying
All
to make
right,
sure
false alarm.
everything's up to par.
All right, well, to finish my thought there, I think it's cool that Snoopy, as somebody who hasn't run this game all that much in terms of actual RTA, I think it's pretty cool that he is willing to, sign up for this tournament, put himself out there, and show us what he's got. And then over on the other side, JHobz, I think it's great that he has continued with this game. I believe his first running experience was in a sort of long-term series of runs that he's been doing with Spike Vegeta called Weekly Average Races, where the two of them will kind of pick up a new game, give themselves a week to learn a basic route for it, and then race each other. And that's been extremely entertaining to follow. And Hobbs learned the route for that weekly average races that he does and has stuck with the game because it's just a really fun speed game that he enjoys a lot. So glad to have both of these racers here.
Mm-hmm. It was, as I mentioned, Snoopy's been around for a long time. I've actually known him quite a bit longer than Hobbs. Hobbs spent a good amount of time hanging out with the Ori crew, for lack of a better way to categorize everyone, at AGDQ. And so I think that also contributed to, Hobbs, I don't want to speak for him, but certainly must have contributed to really getting into this game, kind of wanting to continue hanging out with everyone.
Yeah, a lot of people in this community have expressed that, they do love the game. It's one of their favorite games, but the unbelievably friendly and welcoming community is the reason they stick around. It's no matter how good your speed game is, if you don't have a great community around it, it's a lot harder to keep yourself interested.
Absolutely true. I haven't been a part of very many speedrunning communities, but I have to imagine Ori's one of the better ones.
I completely agree. There's a few games I've kind of looked into that look like they have interesting speed runs, but they just don't have any active runners and nobody really pays attention to it. And that really makes the motivation to get into a run like that a lot lower.
Mm-hmm. By the way, it looks like we're just sort of fixing up a few little things. We'll be getting this race started very soon. In the meantime, I don't think we've said this explicitly. We talked just very briefly about these runners' backgrounds, and we can go into it a little bit more as we start out the race as well. But what do you think the expectations are in terms of, I guess, race predictions or the kind of strats we might see out of these two?
Well, just going into it, as in terms of current personal bests, JHobz, there's really no way to sugarcoat it. His PB is quite a bit better than Snoopy's. Snoopy has an upper 40s kind of range. JHobz has a high 35. So just in terms of what these players have been able to put out in front of us, Hobbs is definitely the very heavy favorite here. But there's a lot of matches we've seen so far where going into it, we did pretty much know what the outcome was going to be, but that hasn't really detracted any of these runners from wanting to put on their best performance for a race. What I want out of Snoopy here is this is his first tournament, so this is a good opportunity for him to get his nerves out of the way and just play his best and prove to himself that he can put on a good performance in a race.
Right, and it looks like we are starting up. We'll sort of make sure everything gets synchronized, but the SRO race is ongoing, so we will get to see how this thing starts. At this point in the Ori tournament, I'm sure that most, if not everyone in chat here, is sort of familiar with the game and the general tricks. So as we continue on here, we will cover the tricks and we'll certainly commentate on how these guys are doing, but we'll spend a little more time talking about maybe more general topics as opposed to going over the tricks in detail.
Oh, Hobbs giving Snoopy a little charity there. Snoopy was having some trouble with the prologue skip and got started late, but Hobbs misses one of the most shameful jumps you can miss. Right at the beginning, there's a little hop, which is deceptively hard to do. If you don't jump from the right spot, you'll kind of bonk into it and fall back down. It's right at the start of the game, and it's one of those things that every runner has done many times. And as soon as you do, you just instantly kind of slap your forehead, like, "Oh, I'm so stupid."
It's a really great spot to reset like 5 seconds into the run.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like, let's just pretend that that never happened.
So with a little bit of spaghetti on both sides, both players are actually pretty close coming into sign here.
Mm-hmm. Probably important to point out that this is Snoopy's first race. Hobbs, it is not. Actually, I don't know off the top of my head whether it's his second race or his third, but it's certainly Snoopy's first. And so you have the usual race nerves, but you probably have it to an even greater extent because it's his first, and especially because Snoopy has less experience running this game than some other runners, although, I mean, he's still very skilled. I'd say at the point where you're entering an Ori tournament, that sort of takes some guts in itself, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And to sort of go on to that point, one of the coolest things about this tournament, I think, is yes, it definitely you want to at least have a certain level of familiarity with this route to be able to join. But we've seen a lot of runners really step up to the plate, and despite being extremely inexperienced, they've still been willing to sign up for this event anyway because they just want to take part in it. A lot of runners who maybe aren't expecting to snatch any wins from some of the more established runners, but they still just want to get their matches up here on the Speed Gaming channel and want to get the experience of being involved in this.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's especially reflected in the fact that we have a little questionnaire spreadsheet where we asked people, among other things, what their goals are for the tournament. And for some people, it's to, get a top 8 time or to get a new PB, whatever it might be. But you also see a huge number of people who have part of their goal as just sort of having fun and hanging out with the community. And so that's where even if kind of no matter what your time is, you get to have that. And it's not like if someone had a time that was slower than other people's, you'd never see anyone degrade that person or insult that time, because that's sort of not what it's about. So while you do want an incredible time, of course, it's really not what it's about at the end of the day.
You almost got to wonder if maybe those lower seeded players are actually having more fun in this tournament, because if you come into this and you're Hetfield, anything other than walking away with the first place, people are going to be kind of surprised because he's such a heavy favorite that taking any losses is going to be a big upset. Whereas some of these lower seeded players with like high 40s, low 50s PBs, nobody's really expecting amazing performances out of them. And so if they can come in and show us some good times or even get a PB in a race, that is really 110% more than what we expected out of them. So they might be having more fun than the good racers are themselves.
Certainly, stress and tilt and all that is an aspect of speedrunning that everyone has to learn how to deal with individually. Looks like a pretty good start from both Hobbs and Snoopy. They're both getting to wall jump with pretty comparable times. Snoopy just a little bit behind, but not enough to really be concerned about this early in the run. The most important thing is that they both got their level ups to kill all those brambles where they intended to. They'll both obviously be going for this energy, and we'll see if either of them goes for the 5th energy cell later in the run.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what sort of choices the players make on that front. One of the sort of common threads I've been seeing running through this is if players choose to take extra cells, a lot of the lower seeded players are opting for the 5th health because they feel a little bit scared of some of the later areas where without the 5th health, you can get hit and die in one shot due to some of the spikes. Whereas the more advanced players seem to be opting for the energy because they can use it in a little more versatile of a way. If they're feeling scared, they can drop saves, but if they're feeling confident, they can use it for extra charge dashes. So while it is a safety strat, it can also be used to increase your speed if you're having a very good run.
Is there a definitive answer? I'm actually not sure whether done optimally, like say you use your extra energy to do lots more stomp cancels and whatnot, is it actually faster than avoiding it?
We're still trying to figure that out. It's going to be close. It's going to require figuring out what are the exact best places to put some of those extra charge dashes in that the 5th energy will provide. As it stands, it is literally going to come down to seconds, which makes me suspect that with an optimized route, 5 energy might actually end up being faster because charge dashes are really, really quick. But we have not gotten a definitive answer on that front yet.
Right. The other thing about it is, and I suppose this can be said about any speed strat, is you learn these strats, especially in a game that is as precise, has such a high skill cap as Ori, and you practice just as much as you can on all the little details on exactly where you do charge dashes, exactly where you stomp cancel, and do bash cancels. Oh, JHobz taking a death. He's back to the beginning of Blackroot Burrows. Those spikes are not your friend, I'll say that much.
That is quite unfortunate, and because of that, suddenly Snoopy is out to a lead here. Let's see if he can hold on to it. He's been putting a good performance up and keeping up with JHobz. Now, JHobz has been slipping up a little more than usual in this early game, especially with that death. So we'll see if, as the players settle into this run, maybe JHobz can start to rely on his extra experience and clean this run up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So that's a death that JHobz, I'm sure, will be unhappy with. But again, this early in the run, JHobz certainly has a lot of time to catch up.
Yeah, no question about it.
Mm-hmm. Both of them making their way through Blackroots. I missed whether Snoopy got the fast cycle. We'll see if JHobz gets it. And then there's another cycle in the following room that they're going to be trying to manipulate as well.
So going back to the extra energy cells that we were talking about earlier, what have you been doing in your races, Graham? Are you taking extra energy or extra health, anything like that?
I actually am. I didn't for my first race. For my second one, I did. It's something that I hesitated on, and to sort of finish my thought from just a minute ago, you get these little techniques so ingrained in your muscle memory that it can be sort of difficult to change and do new tricks. It's not that you can't learn them or anything, but for every new trick you find, even if it's faster, that's additional time you have to invest in practice. And especially in a race scenario, and this is another thing we've talked about several times over the course of this tournament, in a race, it's usually better to stick with the strats that you're comfortable with, even if they're a few seconds slower here and there. You'll lose way more time by trying something new and fancy and dying than you will by taking a few extra seconds for a safety save or whatever it might be. Speaking of safety strats, speaking of safety strats, JHobz actually opting for a maybe 2 seconds slower strat up there at the top of this dash room in Blackroot Burrows, where you jump onto a platform before dropping the orb rather than dropping it early. Not much of a difference, but maybe that early death is just sort of shaking him enough. Maybe shaken is the wrong word. He's just being a little bit extra cautious, making sure that he gets out of this area cleanly.
Yeah, and it's not a particularly costly safety strat. It's only a second or two, and it completely removes the chance of you dying to those lasers. If he's feeling a little shaky on his movement down here because of his death down there, I completely agree with the decision. Most likely, 2 seconds is not going to be a huge factor, especially because he knows going into this that his PB is further ahead than Snoopy's is, so he might be just saying, I'll take the 2 seconds now and rely on my greater experience in the late game to try and pull ahead. Mm-hmm. Now, given that he has made some mistakes early, I'm curious as to know whether he thinks he's ahead or behind right now. Given what I know about speedrunners, we're all pretty big perfectionists, so he's probably kicking himself for a few of these mistakes. I bet he thinks he's behind right now and wanted to not risk dying and falling further behind.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. At the same time, he, as you've mentioned, he knows that his PB is ahead of Snoopy's, so he knows that with clean movement and everything else, he could pull ahead, or we could see a mistake from Snoopy, although so far he's had a very clean run for the most part. Just about ready to get through the frog walk door, and then we'll see JHobz doing the same. Of course, after they get through the door, they're not in the clear, although Snoopy did get a safety save. I hope he noticed the extra energy. He did.
He does, and he takes it. Very nice.
Do you know off the top of your head what the % chance of that Frankie dropping the extra energy is? It's not high.
I do. It is 10%. That is not a whole lot.
10%. Very,
So when
very
you
nice to get.
Yeah, when you do, it's just an extra little net of safety. Now, with the current route, you can see Hobbs coming up to a fourth energy cell that we take that we didn't used to. So even with the energy drop, you're pretty quickly afterwards now getting that energy cell, which allows you to get a safety save. Before we went and got that and realized we could actually save time with it, you couldn't get your save until even further than these players are right now. You'll see they're going to go through these stompers here. There's an energy crystal. That crystal right there is the first time he would have had enough energy to make a save before we got that. So when we used to do that route, getting that crystal drop from the frog was a much bigger deal. And now it's nice, but it's just really a little bonus. You're going to be getting a safety save pretty soon after anyway.
Right, absolutely. It's important to note too. I'm pretty sure this is something we've already covered in many races as well. I'm sure that's going to be true of most things that we commented on. But there's a cycle right down when you get into Moon Grotto, and you can catch an early cycle and kind of slip your way into the vertical crushers early. But if you miss that, then like any cycle, you have to wait about 8 seconds. And so it doesn't really matter if your movement is a hair sloppy from the time you drop down to the time you get to that first crusher. Hobbs has picked up double jump and he's en route to his blind movement, and Snoopy right on his tail. Assuming that my stream delays are correct, I see Hobbs just ahead by a few seconds.
It's really not much. I am very, very impressed with Snoopy's run so far. He's playing cleanly. He's clearly not letting nerves get to him. He's taken a few deaths, but that's to be expected, especially for somebody with a PB that's in the upper 40s range. But for the level of experience that Snoopy has, he's putting on a great performance here.
Absolutely. I also, unless my eyes deceive me, I think I see Hobbs going for ninja jumps. And I'm not sure if that's something he did before.
That is pretty new for him. He's just recently started to incorporate those. Ninja jumps are if you see a player hopping on the wall and there's every time they jump on it, there's some cool little like flipping animations. You can see Hobbs doing one there. That is a very, very small optimization you can make to your wall jumps that involves letting your inputs kind of go away from the wall and back towards them. And it just lets you fit in some extra tiny little double jumps onto the wall. It saves you a few frames here and there. So for players who are already putting up good times and are ready to start to incorporate even more execution of the run to save a few seconds here and there, that's one route you can go.
I'm actually smiling. I'm excited. Snoopy had an extremely clean grotto skip that actually put him slightly in the lead. These two are just neck and neck. It's always really nice to see in a race. Just makes it way more fun to watch.
Yeah, interesting to note. I mean, Hobbs is getting his ninja jumps here, but that's such a minor optimization. In the face of him not getting first try grotto skip and Snoopy getting it, suddenly Snoopy is in the lead. So it's definitely something to consider when you're trying to improve at this game. When is the right time to start incorporating hard tricks? Ninja jumping is cool if you can get it, but it takes a lot of practice. And is there something that a runner could be practicing that would be a better use of their time? Not to say that Hobbs is making the wrong call here. He's normally quite reliable at his grotto skip, but unfortunately you saw him take some time loss because he didn't get it. So I'm not necessarily trying to call out Hobbs at all here. I'm just saying, as a general rule, when you're going forward, maybe evaluate what tricks you want to put your time into and be realistic about what your goals are at the time.
Definitely. Although ninja jumps do look super swaggy, so they've
really,
got that
really
going
do.
for them. Both of these guys going for the, what's it called, a spirit well in here that they're going to need to teleport back later. Both of them going with pull-out strats, which you can get if you get to that rock quickly enough. If you sort of flub your movement a little bit, it's actually faster to slowly push the rock in than it is to pull it out based on the cycles of those crusher things. I don't remember if it was you I was talking to, Roos, but I realized that there's a lot of items in this game. Oh no!
Snoopy unfortunately flubs his damage boost through the slime there, eats 4 damage and pays for it. But looks like, did he take the save pad there?
Because he did.
Okay, well that paid off big dividends then. Normally racers will just go over to that save pad and stand on it and then immediately leave because all they want to do is activate it to come back later. But Snoopy, maybe having some foresight due to practice problems in the past, decides to take the 5-second loss of making the save, and it pays off big because now he doesn't have to go all the way back to his iceless safety save from earlier.
That's a whole sort of a mind game you have to play when you're doing speedruns, is what safety saves do you take? On the one hand, as we can see, that safety save that Snoopy took paid off big time, because even though it lost him maybe a few seconds to take the save, it saved him my goodness, probably 30 seconds or 40 seconds,
Somewhere in that
maybe even
neighborhood,
more. Yeah, for taking it. And it's always interesting going for safety strats, of course. Obviously being safer, but sometimes there's a mental aspect of it. I know this can be true for me, where I feel like I have something to prove, almost like I should be going for the riskier strats, even if it might likely end up giving me a worse time given my state of practice. You know what I mean? So it's always sort of
Absolutely.
interesting to think about the mindset of these players. Also, nerves come into play. If you're very, very nervous, you might think, I'd much rather just take the safety save for my peace of mind than try to go for the risky strats, even if I know that I can usually pull them off. Maybe nerves are enough that I would mess it up.
And I'm definitely interested to get your perspective on that approach to what tricks to choose, because you have a bit of a unique perspective. Back in vanilla, you were unquestionably one of the top runners, but when DE came out, I know you weren't running it for quite a long time, so coming back, there's a lot of rust to shake off. What is it like approaching some problems where you know that you've been capable of doing the hard tricks, but it's been so long that when you come back, maybe you have to try to settle on some easier ones until you've got that practice under your belt?
That's a very good question. The first thing that comes to mind, oh, by the way, Hobbs going for a nice little speed strat in that key room there.
Yeah, I've seen
That's
some
an
runners start to
interesting.
do that recently. It's a pretty cool little optimization.
Mhm. The first thing I can think of is that speedrunners are perfectionists, as you mentioned, and I think that a lot of times we put a lot of pride into what we do. I mean, you're putting a lot of time and practice into it, and there's a lot of very close friends you make through speedrunning that you're sharing this hobby with, and so your time isn't just a spot on a leaderboard for a lot of people, even though it sort of should be about fun. I mean, a lot of times your pride is in there, and so if you have a bad time, if you're making mistakes, I think that can really sort of eat at you, and that might especially be true if you're doing a race in front of 100, 200 plus people. So one of the things I noticed for myself is that sometimes it can be difficult to sort of bite the bullet and make sure that you go back and practice all those strats, because what am I trying to say here? From vanilla to DE, there's so many new strats with charge, dashing, and everything else, and those things need to be practiced just as diligently as the vanilla strats, but it can feel like I should be good at this game. And so that could certainly be true for, I guess more generally, if you're an experienced runner and a new trick comes out, I could almost see some frustration since you're not going to be very good at the trick right away. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm sort of
absolutely.
rambling a
And
little.
it's interesting that you mentioned vanilla to DE. I mean, this is practically a different run at this point. The tech has changed so much because of dash and charge dash specifically, that the way we approach problems in the definitive edition is so vastly different than vanilla. It's really almost a new game to have to pick up again.
Right, absolutely. And it's not just different because of new strats, without dash. Oh, and I think I may have missed it. I think Hobbs had some issues with his key dupe the first time.
He did. He didn't get the keys in correctly when he died, so he had to redo the first step, which was allowing Snoopy to catch back up again.
They're very, very close, certainly. The thing about vanilla to DE is that it's not just new strats because you have new skills like dash, which of course directly enables charge dashing and whatever else. It's different because even the old strats, something as simple as wall jumping, can now be faster because of ninja jumps. We have these strats even in areas that haven't changed a bit between vanilla and DE, but we've found faster ways to do it. Look at core skip. There's that tiny little strat to kill the frog earlier, save like a second. It is a combination of not only having to learn new tricks, but sort of undo a lot of old muscle memory in trying to learn the newer strats, or maybe deciding that you don't want to invest the time to learn all those new strats and you'd rather kind of stick with what you know. It's speedrunning, and getting good at speedrunning takes a lot of time, and it's something that you have to decide whether it's worth the investment.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this tournament has been great for the community and the level of play as a whole. We've gotten so many new runners because of this, and so many people are putting in so much work. You see your friends starting to get better times, and that makes you want to work harder and start to incorporate harder strats. So the community as a whole is really just kind of nipping at each other's heels and getting everybody to step up their level of play. And because of that, the route is just becoming so well optimized. There's been a ton of very, very minor little changes involving things like dash glides or where do you wall jump here and there. They're just shaving those fractions of a second off and bringing everyone's times down.
It's sort of a burden of knowledge thing sometimes, It's like back before we knew that there was a faster way to wall jump, nobody ever worried about the quality of their wall jumps. It's just something you did. It'd be like pressing A to jump. It was that simple. But
I
now you can do
completely
ninja
agree.
jumps if you want to.
Yeah, this game has become extremely hard to play at an optimal level. There's a lot of cool easy strats. If you're wanting to get into this game, you can start off with some more easy minor strats that don't lose a ton of time. So don't be intimidated if you're interested in learning this game. You can get started with a route that will very quickly get you to like a 40 kind of time. And then once you feel comfortable with the game, then you can start to delve into those more difficult tricks and more difficult optimizations as well.
On the
Speaking
right,
of optimizations, I want to go back and watch Hobbs' Jinso tree again. Unfortunately, he did have some mistakes that were costing him some time, but he was incorporating throughout that some very cool movement that's new stuff that he's been working on. A lot of dash glides that other runners haven't been doing. He's been trying to figure out ways to, cut some cycles, things like that. And I saw some very interesting things while we were having that conversation that I would really, really like to go back and look again.
absolutely. I also think it's important to point out, I have a lot of respect for Hobbs. I'm seeing him continue to go for these ninja jumps, even though he's been making, some mistakes that are uncharacteristic for him. But I don't want to speak for Hobbs, but I mean, if I had to guess, knowing his personality, it seems like he's thinking, I'm going to do these new strats the way that they should be done, even if it means risking my race a little bit. Maybe as this race continues, if he sort of feels like he's maybe falling further behind, it'll also depend on whether he knows how Snoopy's doing. But maybe we'll see him go back to more of his quote unquote normal strats. But I have a lot of respect for trying these new tricks. That takes time and effort. It's
Yeah,
cool to
and
see him put
speaking
in
of
that
risking
time.
his race, Snoopy is ahead by a few seconds right now. Snoopy's just having quietly having a pretty clean run. I think the biggest thing I've seen so far was he took a death. Well, there's one back in Black Root, and he took a death on Key Dupe. So, other than that, has just been not doing anything super fancy, but not messing things up either. Whereas Hobbs going for some harder strats and struggling with them just a little bit, and it's put the two racers completely neck and neck. And we're past the halfway point in the run at this point. Normally when you see players with a disparity in PBs neck and neck, it's early in the game where the tech is a little bit less advanced. And then as you get further into the game, the more experienced player starts to pull further and further away. But we're approaching the later mid game, and we'll be getting into the actual late game soon. And Snoopy is saying, I don't really care how much experience you have. I will keep up with you step for step this entire way.
I love the attitude. This game is just so segmented too. I mean, kind of no matter how good you are at any particular section, this game is just going to throw more difficult things at you. I mean, it's not that the game so far is by any means easy. You've got Frog Walk and Drainless and Core Skip and all of Ginso in these very, very difficult sections. And then you have Sorrow Bash, so their work is really just beginning in terms of this run. A lot could still happen.
Speaking of a lot still happening, we just had a pretty big lead switch. JHobz did get the Kuro cutscene skip. Oh no! I just ate my words, because right after getting the Kuro cutscene skip, he finds some spikes and now has to reattempt it. He gets it a second time. Snoopy, unfortunately, is redoing his Kuro cutscene skip again and fails it again. So both players just repeating exactly what caused them to switch the lead in the first place. Hobbs now pulling back ahead. This time he's playing it safe, doesn't eat those spikes, so he's now cemented himself pretty firmly in the lead. Snoopy is just now finishing his Kuro cutscene skip and gets to move on to that section as well. Let's hope that he doesn't eat the same spikes that Hobbs did and give himself a chance to get back in this race.
Those spikes are one hit kill no matter how much health you have. And given that we did a sequence break with Frog Walk, you're supposed to have this kind of big spider sack that drops down, so making that jump is no problem. But we haven't dropped the spider sack, excuse me. In fact, we will never drop that spider sack in this run. Looks like Hobbs, maybe nerves are getting to him. It looked like on his death, he hesitated between trying to bash the spider's projectile and jumping straight over to the wall. And unfortunately, it didn't hit either one. So he is still in the lead here, but that's some time lost that I'm sure he's not very happy with.
Yeah, to give you guys a comparison, despite the fact that these players are pretty close together, Hobbs is a minute 30 behind his PB, and Snoopy, his charge flame split in his currently submitted PB is 25:07, and he got this one around 23:30, so he's about a minute and a half ahead of his PB right now.
Man, I want to see a PB. I always love seeing PBs in races.
Oh yeah, it's so exciting, and we've gotten a ton of them out of this tournament. Just a lot of the lower seeded players are really, really stepping their game up, and actually we've had a few very high seed players PB in this tournament as well. Pretty amazing to see.
There's another topic that maybe while we're talking about some sort of general race strategies, I'm curious what techniques you have to deal with nerves, because nerves are a major factor in any kind of public presentation like this, and everyone kind of tries to handle them differently.
For me personally, I sort of have two things that I do before these races. The first one I kind of get from a lot of different areas in my life. My previous gaming history before I got into speed gaming was competitive StarCraft Brood War, and because of that, there was a lot of competitive gaming going on, and sort of the way that I dealt with nerves. Oh no, I'll get back to that in a moment. JHobz potentially getting
It
Sad
didn't hit.
Celis. Okay, thank
It
God the
didn't hit.
fireball
It
did
didn't
not
hit.
hit.
Oh my
This is
goodness.
bad for him, but it is not worst case scenario. Snoopy looks like not going for not going for Fast Stompless, but because of the slip ups on Hobbs's side, they're still extremely close together. Like that is just the story of this race: is Snoopy picking easy strats, executing them decently, Hobbs going for hard ones and struggling a little bit, and letting Snoopy keep up with him here.
You could see a little bit of the nerves on Hobbs' side, at least what appears to be nerves. You could see that when he was trying to aim one of his bashes on the way back after firing the sparks projectile towards the rock, he took a very long time aiming, and that's something that's you tend to get very very used to bash angles even on controller, and so it's unusual to see that much time taken. It doesn't make the trick riskier because time is paused while you're bashing, but that's sort of an indicator on Hobbs's mindset at the moment. So he's still ahead here, but not by much. Snoopy keeping very, very good pace.
Yeah, I mean they're in the same cutscene right now. Anyway, to go back and finish my previous thought, my gaming history, a lot of StarCraft Brood War. Oh no, JHobz messes up the rocket jump. That's potentially going to let Snoopy, right back into this. Snoopy does choose to go take the safety save, so he stays a few steps behind. Let's see who can get into Sorrow better here. Oh, Hobbs, struggling so much with the rocket jump. Snoopy is back ahead now. Oh my God, what is going on in this race, Grim? Like I can't even wrap my head around this. If
I don't know.
if
That's
if Snoopy takes this, this will definitely be the biggest upset we've seen in this tournament. No question
absolutely
about it.
the only thing I can think of is that it's nerves, and the unfortunate thing about nerves is that if you're nervous going in and then you make mistakes, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to think, well, this is going terribly. How much worse can it get? And maybe your nerves sort of go away because you've already gotten your slop out of the way. Or maybe you start to overthink it. You start to second guess yourself as to whether to go for the riskier strats. And maybe that's what's happening to Hobbs here. It's difficult to see, but this is feels uncharacteristic for him.
It sure does, yeah. And Snoopy does take a second try Sorrow Bash instead of Hobbs taking his on the first try, meaning that Hobbs pulls back ahead, but they're so close. They're both approaching the frog juggle trick. This is a pretty finicky trick, so either one of these players could very easily fail it and put themselves back pretty far behind.
We've mentioned this in other races. Sorrow Pass is one of the primary places where having a fifth energy cell really, really pays off. In order to do all the optimal strats you want here, especially rocket jumping off of this frog, you really need to conserve every piece of energy. Very nice rocket jump from Hobbs there, and he has enough to take his level up. But he wasn't able to make pretty much any safety saves because he needed to use all of his energy intentionally. Whereas with an extra energy cell, you can make an extra safety save. You can also go out of your way to get extra energy, but that takes more time.
And Snoopy, he didn't take the extra energy cell, but he did opt to go get an energy crystal to make this safety save. Now, most players are taking the fifth energy specifically for this save that Snoopy made. So for him to decide to take that energy crystal instead of do some of the somewhat finicky movement that it's needed to quickly get the fifth energy cell is not a bad decision. Now we see an interesting deviation from Snoopy here. Rather than do the rocket jump, which maybe he just doesn't feel comfortable with, he chooses to go left after breaking the roof with the frog and go get charge jump first, and then he's going to float up to the sunstone afterwards. If you are not comfortable with the rocket jumps, it's not a bad decision to do because this gets you access to the charge jump tree where you get a save and your energy and your health refilled sooner.
Definitely. Once you get not even to this point in the run, but just sort of near the second half of the run, any time you can save is just a huge sigh of relief because your saves become fewer and more far between, as it were.
And
Meaning
optimally,
those
you're going
deaths
to
becomes
give
very costly. Go ahead.
yeah. Optimally, you're going to make almost none, other than the ones the game forces you to take because of Charge Dash. Charge Dash is quite literally an ability where you can just exchange energy for speed. You can burn it to go quickly, and that means that later on in the game, anytime you're choosing the safety save is speed that you've given up. So once you're at the top level, there will be no safety saves other than the ones the game is going to force you to take, like when Hobbs gets to the climb tree. and I suspect we're going to see him probably not take any safety saves. He hasn't really been taking any so far, and he likes to do the optimal route, definitely.
Right. Well, as we mentioned earlier, with him trying all these ninja jumps, and by the way, there won't be very many ninja jumps for the rest of the run because now that we have access to charge jump and charge dash, our movement options are just so much more varied that it becomes pretty slow to do wall jumps in just about everywhere. But what I really like to see is that JHobz doesn't seem to be letting his nerves sort of change his decision making. Maybe he is nervous and maybe it's affecting his performance, but he's not starting to cop out. He went for the rocket jump. He's not making a huge number of safety saves. If I had to guess, it seems like he's doing his best to sort of shake off the mistakes and just continue on, because even though we're well into this run, there's a lot of run left. He still has to get through the rest of Misty and then go all the way down to Light Burst and do the final escape sequence.
And he fortunately gets to this climb tree alive. He took 1 damage off a slime, and it's a very important distinction between 4 health and 3 health when you're in Misty. When he's at 4, he can survive 1 hit on all these spikes you see everywhere. As soon as he goes to 3, those suddenly become a 1-hit kill, and the only difference between alive and dead is 1 missed bash. When you're at 4, you have a little bit of a safety buffer, and despite going down to 3 and knowing he's 1 hit from death and going all the way back to the charge jump tree, he doesn't stop to make a safety save. He plays the optimal route where he doesn't make his safety saves and just gets through it quickly, executes cleanly, and gets to that climb tree where he gets to have his resources refilled.
Right. I'm also seeing JHobz do stomp cancels, which is kind of tricky on controller. So definitely.
I've never tried it. I went, oh no, an unfortunate death from JHobz. And look at this. Once again, we suddenly have a close race. Snoopy is picking up the climb tree that JHobz just went back to. So he's all of a sudden only about 10 seconds behind again. This is unbelievably mind-blowing. Like, this race is so much closer than I ever could have predicted. I'm really, really excited to see how this finishes out.
Me too. That's exactly what we talked about with these safety saves. Just Mystic Woods is another area where you kind of want to conserve your energy, and you don't make very many safety saves unless you're explicitly going out of your way to do so, which is faster, but man, it makes those deaths costly. And this area is just so dangerous. These spikes do 3 damage, so they won't kill him instantly, but they still do 3 damage, leaving him with 1 health.
I'm getting confirmation that Snoopy is 3 minutes ahead of PB, and without a huge disaster, it's probably going to be difficult for him to throw away that much time for the rest of the run. He's most of the way through Misty here. He has the Light Grenade and Horu Splits left to go. Wow, that was gutsy by JHobz there. Oh goodness, JHobz, please take a safety save. You have 3 energy. My heart can't take this. I hope that he drops a save before the boss here.
He's not doing it.
He doesn't. Oh my god, JHobz the madman. Gets boom, 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 kills the boss in 1 cycle, picks up an extra health. Unfortunately, if he eats spikes, being at 3, functionally no different than 1, so he does still have to be careful here. Snoopy now making the final approach into the Misty boss himself, so he's probably about 20-ish seconds behind. If JHobz continues to make some of these mistakes he's been making through the very dangerous Light Grenade split that we still have left, Snoopy could suddenly be right back in it again. And regardless of the final result here, like, Snoopy has absolutely nothing to be ashamed of and has put on just 200% of the race performance I expected.
Oh, absolutely. And again, this is only Snoopy's first race. He's got 2 more coming up in the coming week and a half or so. So if he can pull off this race here, it'll be really exciting to see what he can do in his follow-up races, especially if he continues practicing. And clearly he has been practicing.
Oh, no question about it. All right, JHobz is now coming back into the Blackroot Burrows area. We've seen it once before when we got Dash. We come back now again to collect the completely useless ability Light Grenade, only required because this category is all skills. It's a skill, we have to get it. Nobody enjoys it, but at least there's some good movement to get in there. Let's see if he can get this quick cycle known as the Yoka cycle. He does get through just fine and will now be approaching Light Grenade.
He is certainly not letting those earlier mistakes bring him down. And he got the nice bash there as well. Unfortunately, having to wait just a few seconds to skip that cutscene, but I mean, that's a small price to pay for getting the cutscene skipped correctly.
Yeah, and Snoopy is now coming into Blackroot Burrows himself. This just unbelievable. I would have predicted while JHobz was picking up Light Grenade for Snoopy to maybe be back at the entrance of Misty or something based on their PBs. But instead, he's in the same area. Now, JHobz is finishing in the area while Snoopy is midway through it. So it's as we approach this, it's looking more and more likely that JHobz will be clutching out this victory. But I think JHobz should, count this as a win to have put up such an unbelievably close performance here.
Absolutely. We also still have Door Warp, which hopefully won't give either of these runners any issues, but it's Door Warp. It's a frame perfect trick at 60 FPS. Oh no, JHobz having some trouble with his boulder. Oh, the save.
Oh,
Nope, not the save.
no.
I spoke too soon, and that's going to cost him pretty greatly. It's going to bring him all the way back. And Snoopy is closer than he was before. That's for sure.
I feel like I'm a broken record, but a death by JHobz. Oh, and another one. They're so neck and neck right now. Snoopy is now coming in to get Light Grenade right as JHobz is exiting it. They're down to just another, 10, 15 seconds apart right now. That is easily within the margin of error for Door Warp. A first try Door Warp by Snoopy and, a fourth, fifth, even sixth try Door Warp by JHobz, which is very possible, could have Snoopy starting the Kuro escape before JHobz.
My goodness. If anybody was ever questioning whether this is really a hard game and we aren't just hyping it up, no, it's a hard game.
Yeah, and we've said on a lot of mismatched tournament races that anything can happen in Ori. You never know, and some of our viewers might be thinking, okay, they're just hyping it up because a lot of times the better player has won so far in this tournament. But you are seeing a live demonstration right now that is not just a line of BS. Like absolutely anything can happen to any runner, and it is happening to JHobz in this run.
Right. We mentioned earlier that sort of even entering this tournament and kind of presenting your run to a larger audience takes some guts in my opinion. Anyone who entered this tournament, even the lower seeds, it still takes a lot of skill to run this game. And JHobz being, I don't know his seed off the top of my head, but I mean he's a very very skilled runner. Still very capable of maybe nerves getting to him, maybe just overthinking it, but still very capable of making mistakes. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have Snoopy having an extremely good race. I mean, he's got to be on incredible PB pace. You mentioned that he was 3 minutes ahead.
Yeah, and I imagine he probably still is, if not more. And JHobz is not having a horrendous run here. If he doesn't die in the Kuro escape here, he's looking to finish in the 39-ish range, which for a player with a high 35, just barely sub 36 PB, getting a 39 in a race is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that Snoopy has stepped it up and put on a great performance himself.
We are on Door Warp, and JHobz has it.
He did struggle with it a few times. I didn't get the exact count on it, but
I want to say maybe 5.
It looked like about the right amount. Unfortunately, Snoopy seems to be having a little trouble with his stream, so I'm not quite sure where he's at relative to JHobz. But if he hasn't messed up any of the movement towards Horror, he's got to be getting pretty close to a Door Warp himself.
So we have one very important question left to ask as we look at JHobz's screen on the left.
I think I know what it is, but I'm going to let you ask it, Grim.
Is he going to go for a certain strategy involving a fish? If I had to name it, I'd call it fish strats.
That seems like a really good name for strats involving fish.
Thank you.
It's easy to remember. It rolls off the tongue. Save 7 hours. Let's go for it. You know what? I would like to see JHobz go for it. So far, he's been not letting difficulties with tricks deter him from going for the optimal ones. I'm hoping he says, I don't care if I'm at the end of a run that's gone a little rough. I'm going to go for it anyway. He does.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Oh, man. JHobz, you're my hero. This is especially cool because JHobz plays purely on controller. And to get good fish strats... Oh, no.
Save it, save it, save it, save it.
He does save it. Fish strats are notably easier on keyboard and mouse because you can get easier double bashes that allow you to get the fish into position. JHobz on controller does not have access to that and still goes for it anyway. Now, Snoopy got through his Door Warp. We'll be starting the escape. Unfortunately, JHobz is already holding right, and his run is basically over. But Snoopy finishes this race only 1 Kuro escape behind JHobz, which is far better than I could have possibly imagined going into this, given how much of a heavy favorite JHobz was.
This is going to be a massive PB for Snoopy if he can get through this escape cleanly. I mean,
yeah,
it has to be.
No, speaking of fish strats, Snoopy has to know that he's on good pace right now. When you've run games enough, even if you can't see your timer, you generally still have kind of a conception of where you are relative to your runs. If he has his timer hidden to maybe help himself out with nerves, he has to know this has been a cleaner run than he's done in the past. Does he decide to go for fish strats for the swag, or does he take the safe route and just charge jump up and prevent Kuro from spawning in to take a free PB?
Yeah, we're definitely having some stream issues. Snoopy, I think, has finished. She's actually posting in Discord, although we'll have to wait for the stream to catch up. We'll have to figure out exactly what time he got, but doing no math whatsoever, that has to be a PB. Meanwhile, Hobbs finishing up on the left. Great race by him. He'll be wanting to improve that. A fair bit of spaghetti, possibly due to nerves, but he kept his cool, kept his head straight, and was able to pull it back for the win. So congratulations to him.
Yep, congratulations to both JHobz for taking the win and Snoopy for getting a really big PB when it's all on the line on the stage. Really good stuff from both of these guys. Hobbs, I think the story for him is going to be, trying to figure out what exactly went wrong to cause him to struggle with a lot of these tricks so much. And it's not that he had a bad run or anything. I just know that he will agree with me that he's capable of a little better and cleaner of a race than this. So he needs to figure out what went wrong and what can he fix for, I believe he has one race left. What can he do for that? And then going forward into the tournament bracket. But still a respectable 39.26. It will hurt his average just a little bit going into the seeding, but it's just one race. He can shake it off and do better next time.
Snoopy has finished as well, so good race by him. Getting not the sub 40, but pretty close to it. Sub 40, as we've talked about a few times, sort of being a nice sort of round cutoff point where getting sub 40 is a goal of a lot of runners, and it's not to say anything bad about the accomplishments of anyone in the 40 to 50 range, but getting sub 40 is definitely a very nice milestone. It feels very good mentally to get that time.
Yeah, it's both a good even number and a pretty convenient skill plateau where you can do pretty much whatever easy strats you want, and with just familiarity with the game, get yourself to a 40. But to get to that sub 40 is where you need to start maybe incorporating faster strats, maybe go for stuff that's a little bit less safe, and start to really understand the finer points of the game in order to speed up your time into that next level of 30s kind of times.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So a solid race, much closer than we anticipated, which makes for an exciting watch, although Hobbs will be wanting to improve his time. But congratulations to both of them. That was an exciting race. But don't go away. We have another Ori race coming up for you after this. And who is it between?
The one after this is going to be Snowflame and Pyrox314. Unlike this one right here, where we had a low seed player versus a high seed player in JHobz, we're going to have two of the somewhat lower seeded players going into that one. And to be honest, those have been the most entertaining matches of this tournament, in my opinion, is when you have two lower seeds. Because when you have two high-ranked players, you tend to know what you're going to get out of them. We've seen them stream so much that we know what strats they go for, and you kind of know what times they're going to put up. But it's much more unpredictable when you get the less experienced racers. You'll see them suddenly bust out advanced strats that we haven't seen out of them before or maybe weren't expecting. It can be very volatile with big deaths going back and forth. So I think it's going to be extremely exciting. I'm looking forward to watching that one right after this.
Me too. It also happens to me in my group, so I'm going to be paying extra close attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you played either of these guys yet?
I've played Pyrox. I've not played
excellent.
Snowflame. Actually, our match isn't until next week with Snowflame.
All right, I'll be certain to watch that one closely. I'm sure that's going to be exciting as well.
Yep, and I'm going to be stepping off commentary. Roos, I believe you will be as well.
Yes. I'm looking on the document. I'm not sure who's commentating the next one. I know we have Elo Jiminy. Who is going with him? I guess we'll find out here shortly.
We will have Elo Jiminy commentating and someone else, and we'll keep it a mystery as to who it is because we don't know.
All right, don't go anywhere. You guys will get to find out.
All right, well, Roos, pleasure commentating with you. And
as always,
I'll probably just see you in chat in the next race.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks for watching, guys. See you back in a few minutes for the next race.